You're listening to 99.1 WQRT LP, and welcome to Radio Free Book Club for May 2026. I'm Ken Honeywell. I'm a writer and reader from Indianapolis, and this month finds us in the heads of a whole host of characters walking around London in June of 1923, which can only mean we're discussing Virginia Woolf's famous stream of consciousness, that's what it is, novel, Mrs. Dalloway. Virginia Woolf was a giant of modernist literature and a pioneer of that stream of consciousness style. Mrs. Dalloway was Woolf's fourth novel and details the events of a single day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway, in which she is planning and hosting a party, along with many stream of consciousness thoughts and feelings and flashbacks from Clarissa Dalloway and every other character in the novel, especially Septimus Warren Smith, shell-shocked veteran of the Great War, whose last day on Earth manages to overlap with the other events of that day and days 30 years in the past. That's sort of a spoiler, but come on, Mrs. Dalloway is a classic of English literature. It actually entered the public domain in 2021, and it's really not so much about the plot. Anyway, is Mrs. Dalloway Woolf's masterpiece? I don't know. You might want to read To the Lighthouse or The Waves or other things before you decide that. But we have three great Radio Free Book Club members, at least two of which I know have read To the Lighthouse pretty recently, here to talk about Mrs. Dalloway. So let's ask them all to introduce themselves. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Before I introduce myself, did you all read To the Lighthouse without me? Is this what I'm hearing?
Well, no. Actually, one of you guys explain your reading of To the Lighthouse.
Go ahead, Robin.
Okay. So, Matt Gonzales and I both were members of a class through UIndy where they read To the Lighthouse and discussed Virginia Woolf's, in context with that novel over the course of a semester.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm asking because the last time I did the show, it was with all of you. So I
Well,
was like, oh, it's our reunion. But
that's interesting. I mean, I had told these guys had told me that they were reading To the Lighthouse, and I had asked them if they had ever read Mrs. Dalloway, because I just happen to love Mrs. Dalloway, and said we should talk about that. And I've been planning on doing these kinds of classic novel shows like once a quarter, and this is really the third one we've done. We did Lolita, and we did The Moviegoer, and this is now the third one we've done.
very nice.
So
Okay, great.
now, since we have all been on mic, now we should introduce ourselves.
Yeah, so sorry to kind of turn
Please,
the
Sarah,
conversation.
go right
I'm
ahead.
Sarah Layden. I'm an associate professor of English at Indiana University, Indianapolis. And I'm the author, most recently, of the short story collection, Imagine Your Life Like This, which is coming out as an audiobook
What?
this summer. Yeah.
Wow. Are you reading it?
I did read it.
Wow. How cool.
It was fun.
I
It
bet.
was a learning experience, as always.
Did you do it locally?
I did, yeah, on campus.
Oh, nice. Wow. I will really look forward to hearing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello there, Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Beery, a writer and reader from Indianapolis. And I was also going to say the course through UIndy, I don't have all the details, but just as kind of a plug, just because I think it's a really great idea, this was a community inclusion course. So some members of the general community, including Matt and myself, and a few undergraduates at UIndy taking the course for credit. So
And was it,
really
what,
interesting
4 or 5
experience.
meetings?
No, it was weekly for
Oh, was it? Wow.
the course of the semester, right?
Wow, cool.
Yes, but it was pretty much, I did it all virtually. And there were only a couple of in-person meetings, and those they were like guest lectures, and you could attend virtually. So you're going online every week, and you're sharing some thoughts in response to a prompt from the professor and responding to thoughts others have shared. It's still a really great way to discuss a book.
Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, I think in-person like this is even better, though.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Matt Gonzales. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Matt Gonzales. Obviously, that I didn't need to say that. You just said my name. But I'm a writer, a reader, and I own and operate a branding agency with my wife. And I have a now dormant Substack. I haven't published anything recently at an ongoing concern .substack.com. Is that how it works? It's been a while since I've said it out loud.
I think that's right.
Something like that. But anyway, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this book. I have lots of feelings about it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to it too. Well, thanks everybody. And I know we talked a little bit about spoilers, and there will be lots of them. So if you've never read Mrs. Dalloway, you might want to come back later, which is easy because you can find this and all the episodes of Radio Free Book Club on Spotify, just about anywhere you stream podcasts, including WQRT.org. You can find links to all our past episodes. We also hope you'll subscribe to our free Radio Free Book Club Substack for non-spoiler notes about the book, including whether or not we'd recommend it. I should also say we're recording this from the brand new Contemporary Art Museum of Indianapolis, which is just a fabulous space.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, if you are in town, please make an attempt to get down here and see the cool things going on down here at CAMI, the Contemporary Art Museum of Indianapolis. And if you're not from Indianapolis, this is just another good reason to visit. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about why we decided to talk about Mrs. Dalloway, and I want to talk more about why we want to talk about Mrs. Dalloway at all. But first, let's talk a little bit about Virginia Woolf. What's everybody's experience with Virginia Woolf? And is this the first time you've read Mrs. Dalloway?
Yes.
Matt, this is your first.
Yes.
What else have you read of Virginia Woolf?
Just this and To the Lighthouse. That was my introduction to Virginia Woolf, which is a bit embarrassing to say as an English major who is, the same age as the character of Mrs. Dalloway, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 51.
Same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think she's 51.
Strange coincidence.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Made reading it feel a little more. There was like a visceral connection with the character because of that.
Yeah, interesting. Robin, how about you?
I'm a little older than Mrs. Dalloway, but that wasn't the question, I guess. The question was, how much Virginia Woolf have I read? This might be my second or third time through Mrs. Dalloway. And I first read To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway, I think my freshman year of college. And actually, I often tell people that it was To the Lighthouse that made me switch my major from computer science to English.
Wow.
And maybe think about becoming a writer. Although Kafka was in the mix there too.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah. Sarah?
I read Mrs. Dalloway after college. And I think I read it first and then read A Room of One's Own after that. And I'm pretty sure that the way I came to A Room of One's Own was there were a couple of bookstores that had that name, like feminist bookstores.
Oh, yeah, right.
And that was what clued me in. But I want to say, I was a journalism major, and I want to say that I was introduced to Virginia Woolf through a card a friend sent me, which I keep in a frame in my campus office. And it says, it's a picture of Virginia Woolf, and it has a quote from her. And it says, "It is in our idleness, in our dreams, that the submerged truth sometimes comes to the top."
Wow.
And this was it came to me via Borders in Castleton, where a friend of mine was working, and she wanted to pass that along. And it's somebody I'm still in touch with. We texted just this morning. Hey, Julie, if you're listening. But just kind of interesting, too, just to think about the things that we write down and the things that we keep in our heads and the way that we remember things, which I think is part of the Stream of Consciousness novel.
Yeah, I too was a journalism major, so I come to most of my reading of classics a little bit later, but I've probably read Mrs. Dalloway 4 or 5 times. And I've read To the Lighthouse a couple of times and A Room of One's Own, and I'm not sure what all else, but yeah, I've always just been a big fan of Mrs. Dalloway. So I guess the next thing I want to ask is, this novel came out in 1925. It's a war novel. It comments on British class society and imperialism. Some people these days are suggesting even that it was something of a pandemic novel coming as it did after the flu pandemic. It's, as a stream of consciousness novel, it was innovative at the time, but it's just the stuff of, modern fiction these days. There's no special trick to what she's doing. Why do we still care about Mrs. Dalloway?
Matt, go ahead.
Oh,
You
wow.
have a look like you're ready.
Well, I need to stop having that look then because it's deceiving. I'll venture an answer to that, but I think that one of you all may be a better authority when it comes to this question. Me, having only read it for the first time. But obviously, Virginia Woolf has such a enormous reputation as not just a forebear or one of the leading voices of the modernist movement, but as a woman writing during that time when she was. When you think of modernism, she might be the only woman's name who comes to mind, but also because of her role in, I don't know, what wave of feminism that there were no waves yet, right? Which waves, by the way, is a really apt metaphor to use when talking about Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
But her reputation, even when you haven't read her, if you're an English major, you know how just important of a figure she is in literature. And this is widely regarded to be probably her masterpiece. Other people argue to The Lighthouse, I think. I think those are the two that are often, that might be in the conversation. So as to why, I still think it reads as a pretty wildly inventive book. It is very British and it is 100 years old, so it can take a little bit of work to really, get into it at first if you're not, sitting around reading books from that era. But it is a pretty exhilarating read once you get into the flow of it.
I also think, so this copy that I read this time, I had the advantage of having pretty good notes at the end of the book. And one of the things I realized now that I'm a little older and actually went and read a lot of the notes, I think she was really, like, her genius at putting different cultural and historical threads in conversation with each other in a way that's not really all that heavy-handed is really, like, still pretty unique. I'm sure there are people who are doing it just as well now. There's a lot of contemporary fiction that I love and is, equally genius, but I definitely think hers is not diminished at all in comparison in that way.
I think those are all great points. And I think, just the fact that she was concerned with the inner life of a woman, that was not something that got a lot of attention or page time, I would say.
Well, let's talk about that woman, and starting with the famous opening line. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. Why is that such a famous sentence? And what is it we learn about Clarissa Dalloway in that sentence?
I think there's so much packed in there. It starts with her status, that she's a married woman and that she doesn't have a first name, at least not at first. We don't get it first. She said she would buy the flowers herself. It's an action that she is going to do, and it's externalized. She said it. So it's something that is out there. It's not just something that she's thought. So, but why does she need to tell somebody that? Because it's not something she would normally do. It's something she's choosing to do. So that's like a class marker, that this is something that, I think there's another point in the book where she talks about sewing her dress by herself because her, does she call them maids? I don't know how she refers to them.
I'm not sure.
But that they're too busy. They're too busy. I will do this. So it's almost like the luxury class deigning to do this task that's not normally theirs to do.
Yeah. What is there about Clarissa Dalloway that is so interesting? Why have we chosen to spend 137 pages on Clarissa Dalloway?
Well, in a way, it sounds like you're asking, why did Virginia Woolf choose to, write this book about a fairly unremarkable? Yes, she's a member of the upper class. She seems to be married to a conservative politician. She's not really, she's not the kind of character that if you were to ask a young Matt Gonzales anyway, to spend a whole book with, that I would think, well, let me do that. I'm excited about that. I would think a 51-year-old British woman who's married to a conservative prime minister who's going to buy flowers. It kind of sounds conventionally boring, but maybe that's part of what makes her such a great vessel for the kinds of things that Virginia Woolf wanted to write about, which were really pretty radical at that time, and to be able to kind of, smuggle those things in under the guise of this really kind of stuffy, in a way, and comparatively speaking, certainly by today's standards, and probably to even Virginia Woolf, who was not a stuffy, upper class, conservative person at all. So I think it's fascinating that she chose such a, on the surface, ordinary, maybe even boring figure to tell a story that has some pretty radical themes in it.
And then, of course, oh, go ahead, Sarah. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say then there's Septimus Warren Smith, who is in many ways, parallel and in many ways kind of the opposite of Clarissa.
Absolutely. I was going in that direction because I don't think it's a book just about her. I think she's our title character, but I think that part of the genius of this novel is that anyone that is even passing on the street, we get access to their thoughts. Like that's the great imaginative act, that we are in every character's head, but primarily Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa, and Septimus. And I think that they're opposites. They're light and dark. And I think that they're probably what was inside of the author, the light and the dark. But you know what the first title was, right, of Mrs. Dalloway?
Yes, The Hours.
Yes, I brought my copy.
Yeah.
With my $1 clearance sticker. What's up with that? I don't know. But yeah, The Hours, which if you haven't read that book, it's really phenomenal as well.
Yeah, it's really good. I haven't read it in a long time. On that note, has anyone seen the film version of Mrs. Dalloway,
No.
starring Vanessa Redgrave?
Oh, no.
Never.
I never had either, and I started watching it a few nights ago just because I wanted to see how they could possibly do it. And they did it all with, very live, very frequent flashbacks. Because, of course, everything that's in all these characters' heads,
Yeah.
they would have to actually play out in the movie. So all these scenes of Borton, is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
Between the young Peter and the young Clarissa and the young Hugh, were all played out in the film. It was interesting. I don't know if it was a great film, but I think that was about the only way they could have done it.
Interesting. Yeah.
It does seem like one of those books that does not translate well into cinema, even though there's a cinematic quality to the storytelling in terms of just the way she, sort of has this montage of scenes but there's not much plot, very little plot. It would be an indie film these days. I feel, like it's just not a lot of drama.
Well, how do Clarissa and Septimus go together?
I think it's hard for me to separate what I know about Virginia Woolf from my concept of why she brought those characters together. But I do know that, in her books anyway, she seems to be very attracted to these women, especially who are social artists in a way, I would say, whose art is bringing people together or caring for people in the case of Mrs. Ramsay and To the Lighthouse, and really celebrates that, that social connectedness that some people are just really very good at. But of Virginia Woolf herself, I know that, she struggled with mental illness. I imagine felt fairly isolated and sort of introspective at times. And so I wonder if this was sort of two sides of herself that she sort of was projecting into this novel in some way. That's always been my thinking about that, but I don't know if that's, right or even useful way to think about it.
Yeah, I don't either. It's, they never actually meet. They might pass each
Right.
other on the street.
Right. And I think that they do pass each other on the street at the beginning because she's out buying the flowers herself, and he is also out at the park.
And reacting to a car backfiring.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
what was
there's
with
that-
what was with the car? What was that whole episode about not knowing who was in the car?
It's class, right? That somebody could drive by you and close the curtain, and then everyone is speculating on who it is. Is it the prime minister? Is it the prince? Who else were some of the possibilities? I don't remember. There were several, but I think that's kind of like the handoff too, where even though there isn't a lot of plot, there's a lot of imagery, and so the handoff of consciousness. We're in her head, and then I don't know if this is exactly how it happens, but we get into his, and we get into his consciousness, and then we get into his wife's head as well, and that's where we learn kind of the extent of his PTSD. They call it shell shock, that he's, just in this devastated state. And it's Lucrezia, right? That
Yeah.
she is trying to get him to look up into the sky, to get him out of himself so he can, the doctor said he needs to be outside of himself in order to heal and to get better. And what she's pointing to is skywriting, and they're spelling it out in anticipation, and it's like an ad for toffee.
Right.
That's the thing that you fought the war for, and now you're looking up into the sky where maybe you had flown a plane or been in some sort of situation. But I don't know, there's just something, just those contrasts of images, that here you have this man, and I don't remember the exact line, but it's something along the lines of the world raised its whip. That he was flinching, he had a look in his eye, he was waiting to see where the whip would fall. That description was so vivid. And then, this idea of this ephemeral skywriting for toffee that is going to go away, but his problems remain.
Yeah.
Yeah, her depiction of his state of mind was pretty harrowing in parts. I mean, I found it genuinely disturbing. If you've ever even brushed up against feelings of sort of mental instability, you can at least, I felt like there was a sense of authenticity to the way. There was another, and she's so great with metaphors, similes, and I believe the phrase she used to describe his state of mind at one point was he was like a veil over a rock or something, like a veil stretched over a rock. He was so thinly, and it was just such an interesting choice of, material, and you got the organic and the veil. It's just beautiful. And there's a lot of poetry in this book. But yeah, I feel like she and Septimus, Clarissa Dalloway, are kind of, they never meet except for maybe that passing in the street at the beginning until the end of the book.
Right.
Which they don't meet face to face, but he does sort of...
He becomes a presence at the party.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's, obviously planned, I would imagine, from the beginning of the book.
Right. And that her remark upon it is that, I can't believe they're talking about this at my party.
Yeah.
To talk of
They
this
brought
at my
death,
party.
death to my party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also loved, Matt, that the image of, and I think it comes in when Hugh and Richard are leaving Lady Bruton's luncheon, the image of the thread that holds them together, and the thread stretching longer and longer and getting thinner and thinner, and then suddenly Lady Bruton falls asleep and the thread is snapped.
Yeah, there's a lot of sleeping too, or dozing, and people, and then as you're in that stream of consciousness, it starts to go into this strange kind of dream state description, like Peter Walsh, who has returned from India. Her the teenage love that is still, they're both kind of pained, him and Mrs. Dalloway, but he has that sort of reverie. That was one of the most beautiful passages in the book, which I won't try to quote because I didn't memorize it. But it alone. There's so many just parts of the book that make the whole book worth reading but they're also a bit difficult. The first time you read it, and it's the kind of book I think that rewards. You said you've read it 3 times, Ken? 4 times?
I've read it at least 4 times.
I mean, how many books have you read that many times?
1 or 2.
Right. I mean, it's that kind of book.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the relationships. Let's talk about Peter and Clarissa. What do we make of them together? What do we make of their first meeting in 5 years, but they haven't been together in 30 years. He shows up at her house. Let's talk about that. What's going on there? His first reaction to her is she looks old.
Yeah.
Her reaction to him is he's exactly the same.
I thought she also thought he had aged.
She probably did, I think her first blush response was he's exactly the same.
He is the same, yeah. And then he weeps. He tells her that he is going to marry somebody, and he's in England to see about the divorce from her. She's married to somebody else. And then he starts weeping.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on with Peter.
There's a lot going on with Peter. Yeah.
I don't know what.
Well, it's at least his second marriage, right? I mean, that's my impression was he was married before. That didn't work. There's all kinds of allusions to, that's just Peter. He's always in that situation, whatever that situation is. But what do you think went wrong with him? Do we know what happened? I mean, obviously, that was a very passionate young relationship that went sour. What happened?
I mean, he keeps going back to that time when he realized that Clarissa was going to marry the man she did eventually marry, Richard Dalloway, her current husband, and seems to be sort of turning it over and over in his mind as something that both, like, he seems to feel, I think, that it changed the course of his life in a way that he's not sure. He feels like it might have been negative, like his life might have been better if he had been with her. And I also think that he seems to have, and like as I read it, he didn't fight very hard. He sort of just
No,
kind of
he didn't
let it
seem to.
happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know that there's any evidence that that part of it factors in, but that is something that I wonder if he felt like maybe I should have done more to try to shape my own destiny rather than just letting this thing happen to me.
And he does idealize her. I think you see that in the way that we get his perspective of what he thinks of her and how he imagines her inner life. And then we get her inner life and her perspective of him. And they're not really, like they're sliding past each other, basically. Like they're missing each other's point,
Yeah.
I think is the big thing that you get from those two perspectives. Is
I
that,
think so, although I think he's still in love with her.
I don't know. I don't know if he is or not.
See, I got that sense that he was too. It's interesting because I wonder if there's something gendered going on in the way we see it too. Because
Yeah.
I relate to Peter. I'm not proud to say that because he seems like he's a bit of a wishy-washy, uncommittal. You know, she went with the stable, boring yet stable husband, and she kind of knew she loved him in a different way, maybe in a much less passionate way than she loved Peter. But she also, Peter was kind of unreliable. But yet, when they came together, there's a part of the book where she's thinking about how they can go into and out of each other's heads so easily. Her and Peter, like even now, right? Where she has this intimacy, this sort of emotional intimacy with him that she doesn't have, very much doesn't have. They sleep in separate beds, her and her husband do. So I feel, but Peter, meanwhile, is getting married to a woman who's much younger than him.
But he doesn't seem happy about it
No,
at all.
the weeping, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's happy, but he's also sort of this prodigal figure. I just feel like he's made poor decisions. He talks about coming back and having to get help to get a job. He's kind of this mess of a person, really.
Yeah.
And then he's wandering in that whole part where he walks through town and
He's like stalking this young woman, right?
So he's got the hots from some random woman on the street that he's leering at.
Yeah.
So he's sort of just a sad guy. And then the ending, the last lines of the book are his. I mean, him
Right.
and her.
Yes,
Right.
we're
And
in
that's-
his heads.
that's-
Yeah.
There she is.
Yeah.
Or there she was.
Yeah, it's repeated actually at least one other place in the book. Yes, for there she was.
It is Clarissa, he said, for there she was.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Well, I think he loves the idea of her.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He loves thinking about her. Love is an action.
Right,
And his
right.
actions do not
No,
convey actual love, I would say.
He's kind of stunted, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's something sympathetic about him to me.
Well,
well, though.
Well, how about her? What does she think about him?
I think she's excited to see him when she's thinking about seeing him early in the novel, I think. But I seem to remember her feeling, or maybe I can't remember if it was her or another character that was reflecting that she had that connection with him and she felt like their conversations were exciting, but she needed someone to ground her or something. I can't remember what the exact phrase was. And that was Richard.
And who was her true first? I mean, yes, she had that teenage fling with Peter, but her real defining youthful experience was with Sally.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. And with Sally and Peter at the party at the very end.
Sally showing up unannounced.
Unannounced,
She
talking
has
about
5 huge boys.
5 enormous boys. I felt like that moment where Peter and Sally were in conversation and they were both waiting. They wanted to talk to Clarissa and she was busy because she's the hostess. But
And wasn't that also, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but wasn't that also the height of insult to her was when Peter said, like, you're just made to be a hostess. And then Richard also said something, at least in her reflection, it was like, they all think that that's just what I do. And then she justified to herself why that's a perfectly great thing to do.
yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm sorry. I
No,
interrupted.
that's okay. That's okay. But I think that moment is very revealing because Peter and Sally are insulting her at the end. They're colluding against her, like her past. And meanwhile, her husband is gazing upon their beautiful daughter and like, who is that lovely thing? Oh, it's my daughter. Like he
Yeah.
has this moment of revelation and surprise.
Yeah.
And then shares it with her. He externalizes the
In a
thing
way
that he's
that he
thinking and what
doesn't
he's
with
feeling.
Clarissa when he
With
brings her
anyone,
the
yeah.
flowers.
Right. No, that's true. That's
Right?
true.
He's
But
gonna
also
tell her-
in a way that the other characters are not doing with each other, I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, I think this is probably one of those novels that if you read at different times in your life, you have different feelings about the characters. And I found myself having some affection for Richard, even though even though he should have just said, I love you when he gave her the flowers, that would have gone a long way. But him just kind of walking around London, realizing how lucky he was, realizing that his life was really good and that he really loved his wife and that he really wanted to tell her in so many words that he loved her. I found myself, feeling like that, feeling that kind of happiness just in the beautiful day, and just appreciating what I have. Did anybody else think about, just in terms of like those lost opportunities and the lost love? It also made me think of the end of The Dead, of Michael Fury in The Dead, the Dead Lost Love.
The James Joyce short story?
And what and how that lost never could be love was just kind of a threat, actually, that could never, like, I forget who the man was, but, he could never overcome this great lost love of his wife. And sometimes I wondered that about Richard too. Was that, or, was her love really Peter or Sally or some combination back there in the past? But he wasn't threatened by it at all. Didn't seem to be, or was he?
Do you think Clarissa seems unhappy with her circumstances? I think we're meant to read her. She's not really examining her
No,
circumstances.
she's not. No,
You
she's
know?
not. No, I feel that all that, lost opportunity more for Peter than I do for Clarissa.
Yeah, I think that's, well, because he does seem to be very pained. He seems to be, just sort of ruminating, on this part of his life so much, the way one does when they feel, like they've made a wrong turn somewhere. And she doesn't do that. She's happy to go out and buy the flowers. She sort of lives in the moment. But yet, I think what's brilliant about the novel is you see the many ways in which a person like her there's a multiplicity of, Mrs. Dalloways. This is the Mrs. Dalloway who loves her husband, even though they sleep in separate bedrooms. I do feel like there are moments where when she's with Peter, where she feels that, closeness with him, that intimacy with him that she enjoys. And then, of course, her relationship with Sally. And then she even says at one point, another character who we haven't mentioned, Miss Kilman, is that right?
No, Miss Kilman.
Who she hates, but at one point notes that in another world, maybe she could love her. She's just, and I think it just depicts the feeling of being a person. We are constantly in flux about how we feel about. I mean, there are times when my wife and I are arguing, and I'm thinking, how did I marry you? But that's like 0.5% of the time, but it does happen, right? And I think it's just pretty brilliant the way that that comes through in this very short book.
Mm-hmm. I also want to.
And if my wife listens to this, I hope she knows that I have no regrets about having married her.
No, we've all had that argument with Amy, man. It's not just you. I want to point out to this group in particular that the last time the four of us got together to talk about a book, it was Flesh, which is almost completely the opposite of Mrs. Dalloway. It was all exterior as opposed to all interior, but
And all Istvan.
right, all Istvan.
Pretty much, right?
Pretty much. Miss Kilman goes on a little bit about the flesh.
Oh, does she? What?
She does. This is on my book anyway, on page 91. Beaten up, broken up by the assault of carriages, the brutality of vans, the eager advance of myriads of angular men, of flaunting women, the domes and spires of offices and hospitals, the last relics of this lap full of odds and ends seems to break. like the spray of an exhausted wave upon the body of Miss Kilman, standing still in the street for a moment to mutter, "It is the flesh." And she says more about the flesh. She keeps thinking it is the flesh. And Clarissa has not defeated her. And, again, funny enough, I mean, there are plenty of mistakes in what people think people are thinking about them in this book, too. Because,
Right.
Clarissa, in a little scene with Miss Kilman, thinks about what she doesn't like about Miss Kilman, and finally she comes to like she's not that bad, I guess, and she gives a little laugh, which Miss Kilman thinks is a huge insult,
Right.
right? When it was like the
exactly.
only time she was thinking positive thoughts about her.
Who was the author of Flesh? Is it David Zaloy?
Yes.
Am I getting that right? I
Yes.
wonder if he's a Virginia Woolf fan, just like Michael Cunningham has pulled The Hours.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
he
know.
pulled Flesh
Yeah, maybe he did.
for his title.
Maybe he
That sounded
said.
terrible. Oh my God.
Maybe he said.
Rewind. Oh.
Maybe he said,
word.
how about if I do exactly the opposite of Mrs. Dalloway?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was just thinking about the word itself, and then I immediately corrected myself because I live with teenage boys, and I was like, everything is a double entendre. But The Hours is something, or just Hours, comes out over and over again.
Yeah, Big
I
Ben.
haven't read The Waves, but waves and water
And flowers
and flowers
are everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But the flowers are not always alive.
No, they're not. But Elizabeth especially gets compared with a hyacinth 3 or 4 times, and other plants, and they are
they're-
everywhere.
Another memorable mention of a flower, and it was around the time of the kiss with Sally. It was like a lit match in a crocus or a fire, and something along those lines. A crocus is a flower. I'm not wrong
Yeah.
about that.
You are
Okay.
correct.
All right. It's not just a bad '80s hair metal band.
What?
Oh yeah, crocus. I think with
With a K,
yeah.
And probably an umlaut, right?
I don't think crocus had an umlaut, but it was a missed opportunity.
It really was.
Yeah.
So how is the way Clarissa sees herself different from the way other people see Clarissa? I mean, do other people see her as frivolous? How does Lady Bruton see her? You kind of get mixed messages from her about Clarissa, that she doesn't like her, but she really does like her. They're kind of intimidated by each other, maybe.
She was really upset by not having been invited to the lunch, right? Like that.
That her husband was invited
Yeah,
to.
and it sure sounded like just a heck of a time.
That's right.
And Hugh Whitbread writing the letter for her, like I could just.
Yeah, Hugh really kind of knew his place, didn't he?
Yeah.
The estimable Hugh, he was called a number of times. And he had certainly put on a lot of weight, apparently.
Yeah, I don't remember, how she felt, or I don't remember how what Bruton was her name again? I don't remember how she felt about Mrs. Dalloway. But I mean, Miss Kilman, though, it felt like she had nothing but contempt for Mrs. Dalloway and her friends, right? Like she viewed them as sort of these posh, privileged people who were maybe not, sufficiently pious, because she was kind of a religious zealot, right?
Right.
And I don't know that Mrs. Dalloway saw herself that way at all. I think she thought of
No,
herself
I think
as
she said she didn't believe in God, didn't she?
well, then she is. I guess
Right.
that part is accurate, but I don't think she sees herself as someone who deserving of contempt for the way she lives her life. I think she thinks she's a fairly generous, thoughtful, caring person. I don't get the sense that whatever version of Mrs. Dalloway lives in the mind of Miss Kilman, in any way looks like the one that Mrs. Dalloway has of herself.
So were there any characters that you identified more with than any of the others, or any characters who stood out for you that we haven't talked about, or even that we have, that you'd like to talk about more?
That's such an interesting question, because this book it's just such a language novel to me. It didn't feel like, even though we are in characters' heads, I very rarely felt like I knew who the characters were. I didn't feel close to them. So even though we're in their consciousness, I don't know how deeply we're in their consciousness. Like, we're getting information that not everyone has, like the privacy or the private things, the secret things. But so this is interesting to me. I think this is Elizabeth. I'm going to have to look it up real quick.
Well, I guess I'll jump in and say, I guess like Matt, I found if I heard you right, I found myself identifying quite a bit with Peter Walsh, which was interesting because I don't think that would have been the case when I first read this, over 30 years ago. And it was that sense that I kept getting from him, that he was kind of going over like all the different ways his life could have gone and didn't go. And there was a terrible confession it was. He put his hat on again, but now at the age of 53, one scarcely needed people anymore. Life itself, every moment of it, every drop of it, here, this instant, now in the sun in Regent's Park, was enough. Too much, indeed. A whole lifetime was too short to bring out, now that one had acquired the power, the full flavor, to extract every ounce of pleasure, every shade of meaning, which both were so much more solid than they used to be, so much less personal. And that it just hit me. I think, that feeling I really identified with was just wanting so much more time to go over everything again and again, but only knowing that like you just have this one shot. The paths that you took, you can't go back and retake. You can't stop and look more closely at those things that are behind you. And maybe the only thing, maybe he's kind of grasping at that wisdom now. Like now I know, everything I need is really here around me. I just have to pay attention to it. But even that might not quite be enough,
Yeah.
having got the full like savor of it.
That's really good. I found what I was looking for, and it's through the perspective of Clarissa. And she and Septimus do not meet, but I think that at the party, when she hears of his death, she tries to imagine what it felt like to be him. Like she tries to think about what that is bodily. And that's a moment where I think those two characters, it's like they're, transparencies almost, but they're lining up together. And it's, this is on my page 184. I don't know where it would be for you, but she's imagining what it was like for him to die, and to die by suicide. And it's really hard to separate the art from the artist when you know that
Sure.
that's what Virginia Woolf did.
Yeah.
But she writes, this he had preserved. Death was defiance. Death was an attempt to communicate. People feeling the impossibility of reaching the center, which mystically evaded them. Closeness drew apart. Rapture faded. One was alone. There was an embrace in death. And then she imagines what that was like. And it's just, for Clarissa, the character who exists in this brighter space, to imagine the dark, it's very sad to me to read that and think about the author writing it and trying to come to grips with her own problems and her own mental health in a way that, we didn't talk about back then.
Yeah, right.
And she also, I've only read a little bit about Woolf's biography, but, she was sexually abused by both of her stepbrothers or half-brothers, and wasn't believed. And that's something that's been revisited in terms of her mental health and her life and death. So, it's just like you talk about the impact of this book and how long it's lasted. And I think that we've read it in different ways when our societies and cultures have been ready to talk about different things.
Well, yeah, she was really kind of forgotten for a long time.
Yeah.
There were no women modernists. There was just, Eliot and Joyce.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really till the 70s, till like second wave feminism kind of rediscovered Virginia Woolf.
Yeah. Waves again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Matt, did you have something there?
Well, you asked about characters, and I agree with Sarah that it's not a book where I feel like you get, the characters are so fluid, and the real characters are the feelings or the themes, and death and life. I feel like this is a book about both of those things, and I think Clarissa is on one end of that spectrum, representing to some degree life, and Septimus death. But if you don't mind, I think this is a great book to read parts from.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
And I just want to, this is something I marked, and she reflects early in the book about death in a way that just caught my eye on page 7 in my copy. And I'll just start here. She remembered once throwing a shilling into the Serpentine, but everyone remembered what she loved was this, here, now, in front of her. The fat lady in the cab. Did it matter then, she asked herself, walking towards Bond Street? Did it matter that she must inevitably cease completely? All this must go on without her. Did she resent it, or did it not become consoling to believe that death ended absolutely, but that somehow in the streets of London, on the ebb and flow of things, here, there, she survived, Peter survived, lived in each other, she being part, she was positive of the trees at home, of the house there, ugly, rambling all to bits and pieces as it was, part of people she had never met, being laid out like a mist between the people she knew best, who lifted her on their branches as she had seen the trees lift the mist, but it spread ever so far her life, herself. So just this sort of like transcendental, vision she has of what happens. She may not believe in God, but she has this vague idea that she continues. And it's funny that she mentions Peter and not Richard there, by the way. That they continue to exist in each other and in the mist. And it's a beautiful passage.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the trees, too. I mean, Septimus thinks about the trees being alive.
Yeah.
And talking to
It's
each
a quite
other.
scary way.
It's so interesting, Matt, because the one I pulled out was from the scene right after Richard has given her the flowers, and she's feeling bad about something, and the way she's feeling desperately unhappy. She says, as a person who has dropped some grain of pearl or diamond into the grass and parts the tall blades very carefully this way and that, and searches here and there vainly, and at last spies it there at the roots. So she went through one thing or another, and she goes through, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, but where she kind of finally ends up in that scene is, says, all the same, that one day should follow another, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that one should wake up in the morning, see the sky, walk in the park, meet Hugh Whitbread, then suddenly in came Peter, then these roses, it was enough. After that, how unbelievable death was, that it must end, and no one in the whole world would know how she had loved it all. That's, I'm older than all of you, and that makes me go, yeah.
Yeah, no, I
right.
feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It sounds too, like I feel like that's one of those places where I maybe felt like Virginia Woolf's consciousness was somehow had followed that thought along the way some way, because like no one will ever know unless, I write it down.
Right.
I feel like her own thoughts are always kind of shadowing the characters in this story too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if she wanted to talk about the kinds of things that she wanted to talk about, whether it was, her sexual preferences or inclinations, her, mental illness, they kind of had to be, to do it directly wasn't a thing folks did then or could do without being censored in some cases.
Right.
Well, I've not been a very good steward of time, as per usual. Let's talk a little bit about the ending. Let's talk a little bit about the party. How'd this all come out for all of you?
I'm curious whether anyone else felt. I felt like after having gotten a little bit to me, and just as a reader, reading it this time through, but I felt like I'd kind of lost energy. I was wasn't quite as into it. And then when I got to the party, suddenly it seemed to come back to life again for me. And I remembered that I think she based this novel on a short story or a sketch or something that she wrote earlier called Mrs. Dalloway's Party, right? And so I do wonder whether that was sort of the like white hot core of this novel in some way, and that I was feeling that heat of it at that moment.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of life in the party.
Yeah.
And death. And death comes to visit the party, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience reading it. I felt like momentum picked up a bit towards the last 50 pages or so. And I don't know, I honestly thought maybe it was just when I chose to read it, but it's interesting that you had that experience too.
Yeah. Sarah?
I don't have a lot more to say about the party or the ending than I've already said, but I think that you want to build towards something in a novel, right? You want to have a sense in a book that you are. In this case, it's having all the characters come together in a room, and she's the connector.
Yeah.
Like she's the kind of focal point of people's thoughts and energy, negative and positive.
And what does it all come to? What do you take away from Mrs. Dalloway?
I really have a hard time kind of summing it up or even thinking about it in terms of a takeaway, because it does feel like you have just been with thoughts
Yeah.
and just this kind of electrical energy for, almost 200 pages. And it's harder to talk about for that reason, I think, than some other novels.
It feels kind of like life. I mean, I think that's
Right.
the interesting thing. I got into a long discussion with some friends this weekend about AI and whether AI was conscious or could be conscious or become conscious. And it was very interesting to have been reading Mrs. Dalloway and have that discussion. And it seemed to me that maybe it's not AI, maybe like a spigot of consciousness, like it's conscious when you turn it on, but when you turn it off, is it still having thoughts? I don't know.
I think it's electrical, but I don't think it's thoughts. I mean,
Yeah, no, I don't think it is either.
This is a conversation that we have a lot in English departments and
I'll bet you
among
do.
writers, just, reading AI writing. It's so flat.
Yeah, it is so flat.
It's so dead. It's not animated by a human being. It is the accumulation of human words that have been put together, and then they've just been remixed and spat out without the humanness. How do I feel about it, you might be wondering?
As a writer, how do you feel about that, Sarah?
Stay real, make art.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I assume we would probably all recommend Mrs. Dalloway to our reading friends. Yeah? Anybody have reservations about it, Matt?
Sure. I don't think it's for everyone. It's a little challenging. I mean, the sentences do not flow in a easy to digest way necessarily. There are lots of commas and semicolons. Sentences will just run on and on. As that I think this, she was trying actively, and one can tell even reading it now to do something different than what people normally have been doing in the realist, I think, tradition that was dominant up before the modernist movement began. And it's a little jarring. It's dissonant, and so if you're not up for that, it's kind of a difficult book, even though it's short. But if you're willing to just, let yourself, to take on the challenge, I think it's incredibly rewarding. I really do think it's a very poetic, beautiful, heavy book. Which is funny because it's called Mrs. Dalloway, and if you would have told me when I was 23 years old that about a book called Mrs. Dalloway, I would have been like, yeah, okay, I'm not buying it.
Doubtfire?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, you're right, Sarah. In a way, it's difficult to talk about, and in another way, you could probably talk about for another 3 or 4 hours,
Right.
which time we don't have. But maybe we have some other things we might want to recommend to the audience. Anybody have a book recommendation? Matt, got anything?
It's funny. Robin mentioned that along with Virginia Woolf, Kafka helped him make the decision to go from a well-paying career of computer science to becoming an English major. And thanks, Kafka. And
It's kind of evened
But
out
maybe
lately,
doomed.
though.
Yeah. And, thanks to AI.
Right, that's right.
right.
No, you're right. I actually listened to the trial. I never read that either, but I'm going to Prague for vacation.
Oh, nice.
And I read most of Kafka's short stories, but wow. I mean, it was, it's a piece of work, much different than this, but we'll leave you floored. And actually, the Penguin Classics audiobook is quite good.
All right.
The voice actor, I don't know who it is, some English theater actor, does a very good job of bringing Joseph K. and the various other characters to life. So I would recommend that.
All right. That sounds great. Thanks, Matt. Robin?
I'm going to recommend, because I started reading it just because the foreword of my edition of Mrs. Dalloway was written by Jenny Offill. Her first novel, Department of Speculation, is fantastic. It has some parallels, I think, too, in the way that she brings together all of these disparate cultural and mostly cultural references that sort of to illuminate a very emotional human story. sort of, it's bathed in the light of all these seemingly not connected observations. So I think it has that in common with Mrs. Dalloway in some ways.
Yeah, great recommendation. Yeah, I read it a while ago. I should revisit that. Maybe read it twice, 2 or 3 times.
You could. It's very short.
Yeah. Sarah?
It's interesting. We talked about Kafka's The Metamorphosis in my fiction writing class this semester, and the students really enjoyed it. I think that they were kind of pleasantly surprised to see how Kafka has influenced so many different contemporary writers. And I don't know for sure that this writer was influenced by Kafka, but I can see some of this influence. I just read, it's a short story collection with a novella. It's called Lost in the Forest of Mechanical Birds by Christian Moody. He lives here in Indy. And it's a really fascinating collection. It's got kind of some elements of speculative fiction, and a little bit of sci-fi in there, but very literary and like great sentences.
Nice. Awesome. Great. Have to check that one out. Thanks, Sarah.
What about you?
Well, so this is usually I want to try to recommend something that either has something to do with the book we read or something that I just love that I have just read recently. And there's not anything else that I've read recently that I just loved. So there are multiple references in Mrs. Dalloway to Cymbeline, Shakespeare's. It's kind of a tragicomedy set in early Britain.
Fear not the heat of the sun bit. Yeah.
Yes, it's a late Shakespeare. I've never read it before. It was popular like in the 18th century. It really fell out of favor. George Bernard Shaw called it, quote, stagey trash of the lowest melodramatic order, in parts abominably written, though intellectually vulgar, and judged in point of thought by modern intellectual standards, vulgar, foolish, offensive, indecent, and exasperating beyond all tolerance.
What a hater.
Now, Shaw also actually rewrote the final act, and as in a play as Cymbeline Refinished, and he later said it was one of Shakespeare's greatest plays, but the final act fell apart. Anyway, I hadn't read any Shakespeare in a long time, so I thought, okay, let's read this. And it was a challenge, and it was kind of fun. And so I guess my recommendation is, read some Shakespeare, maybe Cymbeline. And with that, remember you can stream Radio Free Book Club practically anywhere you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to subscribe to the Radio Free Book Club Substack as well. It's for Sarah Layden, Robin Beery, Matt Gonzales, and all the members of Radio Free Book Club. I'm Ken Honeywell. Thanks for listening, and join us next month when we see what kind of mischief George Packer is getting up to with his dystopian parable from last year called The Emergency. We hope you'll join us. Until then, read a book.